Hey everyone, meteorologist Nicole Papay here. It is just 11 o'clock now in the morning. We just received the latest information on Dorian. This is the update that came from the National Hurricane Center right just before 11 o'clock. So I just kind of processed all of what just came into us, and I want to now reveal the information to you. Dorian has strengthened again. We have reached the top level, a Category 5 storm as of earlier this morning, but that doesn't mean the wind still can't get stronger. This is the top level of the scale, Category 5, but it doesn't mean that the storms just can't get stronger. We just don't have a Category 6 to label it. So here we have an incredibly powerful system. Early this morning, around 8 o'clock, the winds within the strongest part of the storm were 160 miles per hour. Now, just a few hours later, the Category 5 Hurricane Dorian is up to 180 mile per hour sustained winds within that eye wall. Incredible, devastating strength. It is also, like we talked about earlier this morning, continuing to move slower in a forward motion, which means it's going to linger over the Bahamas for quite some time. The wind field is expanding, which means hurricane force winds are stretching out farther. Tropical storm force winds are going incredibly 140 miles out for the tropical storm force winds. Here is the current live look at Hurricane Dorian. Classic, beautiful storm on radar, but so incredibly dangerous. And right now it is on its way to the islands of the Bahamas. I'll zoom in here and you can see that eye wall just barely beginning to reach. I'll stop it in the current setup. The outer islands, I believe they're called the Abaco Islands of the Bahamas. And this is just devastating to them. I mean, the islands are just so small, they're going to get pounded for hours and hours, and they've already been seeing rain and wind and dangerous thunderstorms for hours within some of these darker shaded red areas. You can see major thunderstorm activity developing there. So putting this into motion, it is moving incredibly slowly. It has a 7 mile per hour forward motion, which is just incredibly slow. It is a Category 5 right now with those 180 mile per hour sustained winds. The hurricane force winds, anything over 74 miles per hour, they extend about 45 miles out from the center. But like I mentioned before, the tropical storm force winds, they are now going out 140 miles. So I'll put a little tracker on here from the current location. 140 miles out, that is almost 3/4 of the way to Florida, basically, for tropical storm force winds. So they're probably already starting to see some higher surf, already seeing the outer bands bring some cloud cover and some isolated rain. You know, these Bahamas Islands, we have to be thinking of them today. It's going to be incredibly dangerous to be there. The central pressure has lessened a little bit as well, which of course is why some of those wind speeds can be reached now out 45 miles from the center for hurricane strength and 140 miles out for the tropical storm forces. The 11 a.m. update did include a track update. It has not changed much from what was expected earlier today, except for the fact that, look at this, Category 5 strength is now expected to last all day today, all night tonight through the Bahamas, and even into 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Earlier today, when we were only at about 160 mile per hour winds, it was expected that it would drop to Category 4 strength pretty quickly after making landfall near the Bahamas. Now, the entirety of the Bahamas are expected to stay at Category 5 strength with this storm, almost a due west motion. And then finally, by about Monday into Monday afternoon, we could see it decrease to Category 4 strength. But look at that wind. That is still just incredible. We're talking 160, 165 mile per hour winds as it begins to weaken. So just because you see those numbers going down does not mean we can take our eye off this thing. We're looking incredibly dangerous for the foreseeable future here. Once it starts to make its approach toward Florida, obviously you can see that cone of uncertainty still has the Florida coast and really almost halfway through the state of the peninsula here in the potential that if it continues westward any extra, it could still make a Florida landfall. Right now it looks most likely, just like it did this morning, that we will see it kind of skirt that Florida coastline and then turn northward. That the quickness in that northward turn will have a significant impact on what it means for the Carolinas coastline. But look at the days we're talking about here. That northward turn may not happen until Tuesday, and then it will hug the coast of Florida all the way until early Wednesday morning before even decreasing in strength a little more and heading northward toward the Georgia and South Carolinas coastline. So here's what we're really looking at when we get a little farther into the week. Thursday, it could be right around the Charleston area. Likely at this point, it does look just offshore. But again, look how much of South Carolina still sits in that cone of uncertainty, both to the west, inland, and to the east, out to sea. That cone is very large a few days out. So we will not, at this point, be able to determine how close to shore it will come, if we could see a brief landfall, or if this will end up out to sea and just bringing a dangerous wind and rain and high surf rather than an actual landfall. North Carolina, even closer to shore for the potential of a landfall, and that happens more Thursday into Friday. Luckily, it does weaken to about a Category 1 storm by then, but something so close, even a Category 1 storm, we are talking 75 to 100 and some mile per hour winds with gusts, in that area. And that really does create high surf, the storm surge potential, and just kind of like the training effect where it just kind of lingers up each beach all the way up. So there have been issued some new warnings. Right now, the southern Bahamas Islands are under a hurricane watch, while most of the Bahamas are under hurricane warnings, rightly so. They are seeing a hurricane on top of them right now. Florida, now looking at areas down closer to Miami under a tropical storm watch. There's a tropical storm warning for areas north of Miami to almost the Daytona Beach, West Palm areas. And then a little bit farther to the north, we'll get into this area of Florida, almost, like I said, to Daytona Beach. They're now under a hurricane watch because at that point in the coastal lineup, it looks like it'll be a little bit closer to shore in those areas. We likely will see a lot of these areas of Florida, especially of Fort Pierce up to Orlando to Daytona Beach, even up to almost Jacksonville, end up with hurricane warnings because it's going to be so close to shore that we will see the potential for that. So just keep that in mind. They're not quite close enough in the time frame to see those warnings issued at this point, but that's something I do expect to see some upgrades there, and eventually I expect those upgrades to slide northward into parts of Georgia and eventually to our Carolinas. So a lot going on. There's going to be constant updates happening from this. As far as South Carolina impacts, as of right now, the upstate and even most of the Midlands, we're looking at limited impacts. It'll get cloudy. We'll see some breeziness at times. This is toward the end of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday especially. But we're not going to be completely out of the woods. It's just not going to be a big issue here. Our interests, of course, go down into that orange shaded area and especially the coastal red, where we are looking at the possibility for several inches of rain to fall, 3 to 6 inches potentially along the coast, on top of the fact that some storm surge and areas of coastal flooding, beach erosion could happen. With the way the system is setting up, we expect beach erosion to be kind of a bigger issue in some of those coastal spots. And we know how low-lying those Carolina coasts are. So from really Savannah through Hilton Head, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, and then of course up into North Carolina's beaches, Dorian is just going to wreak havoc. So it's definitely going to be what we have been talking about for the last couple of days, where it just kind of rides that coastline. And like I said, because the cone of uncertainty is still so large, it's very possible this storm could touch land briefly in Florida. It's very possible this storm could briefly touch land, depending on how close it gets, into places like Savannah or Charleston, or even up toward the Wilmington beaches, the Outer Banks. It's just we are not quite to the point yet because it hasn't made that northward turn, and it's not going to until early in the week, almost Tuesday for that time frame for it to slowly adjust, that we'll be able to get a better view, a better glimpse, and an idea of exactly when that northward turn will happen and how close to land it will be at that point. So, you know, if it makes a landfall before getting toward our South Carolina beaches, you can expect it to weaken, which is a good thing for us, but obviously bad news for wherever it goes before then. So just keep in mind, it's something that we will watch very closely. Another quick look at the track this morning. We are looking at a Category 5 storm currently with 180 mile per hour winds making it to that edge of the Bahamas Islands, and it will likely stay Category 5 with 165 plus mile per hour winds all the way through about Monday morning, if not early Monday afternoon, before making that slow northward turn toward early Tuesday. And then from there, we'll be able to determine a little bit easier how close it will get to our Carolina coastline. So this is just really intense. Those Bahamas areas that are seeing the storm right now, let's get a little closer zoomed in look. They are looking at 18 to 23 feet of storm surge at this point, and 100 mile per hour wind gusts. The sustained winds are at about 180 miles per hour in the upper levels of that storm. So to get 100 mile per hour gusts at the surface, it's going to be devastating. So keep them in your thoughts and your prayers today. We will continue to monitor all of this. This was your 11 a.m. update, and we will have another one for you in the early afternoon, likely about 2 p.m. Also keep in mind, we are going to hear from Governor Roy Cooper out of North Carolina about this storm and what it can mean for their coasts at around 1:30 in the afternoon today. So stay tuned to Fox Carolina on air and online. We will have live streams up. We will have it cutting into our regular programming, and we're waiting to hear if Governor McMaster is going to make any sort of statement about this as well. So it's definitely going to be an active day here tracking this hurricane. We will have all the coverage that you need, so make sure you just stay tuned, and any new info that comes out to us, you will be the first to know. You can head to our Facebook page, obviously, which you're on now. You can go to foxcarolina.com, and you can also get our Fox Carolina News app on your phone. It's a free app, and you can get it on Android devices, iPhone devices. We have apps that will work for anybody, and that's where you can get the most immediate information just sent right to you, where you can just click and look at exactly what you need to know. So again, it's 11:13. I'm going to sign off here for now and do some updates for our webpage and some behind the scenes stuff tracking this system. But we're here for you. If you have questions, email them in to us. You can write on our Facebook page, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. At this point, it's something to keep watching, but at least here locally, we're going to stick with nice conditions through the holiday weekend. We're actually going to look pretty good here for most of the week. We do have the chance at some brief breeziness, a couple of showers toward the end of the week, but this is really going to be quite a bit more of a coastal threat, as well as for parts of the Midlands, where you could see about 2 to 4 inches of rainfall toward the later days of the week. So Thursday, Friday will be the South Carolina impacts. Prior to that, we are looking at more Georgia and especially Florida impacts, while today and tonight is all about the Bahamas. So stay tuned. We'll have the latest for you as soon as we have more in.